ever had a neighbor dispute, I mean, over something totally ridiculous,
Yeah.
buckle up, because this one's straight out of rural Arizona.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we're talking about a property line disagreement, but with a twist that'll make your jaw drop.
Ooh, I love a good property line story. Those are always fun.
Oh, this one's a doozy. So it comes from this online post, and it details a situation that, well, starts out pretty normal,
Yeah.
but then things get kind of crazy.
I'm intrigued. Lay it on me.
Okay, so first you got to picture this. Wide open spaces, dirt roads, like those 5-acre lots.
Okay, got it.
That's the setting for our deep dive today.
All right, I'm there. I can see it.
So we've got this online post, right?
Yeah.
And it all starts with a fence post.
Okay.
Or, more accurately, the lack of a real fence.
Okay, I'm listening.
So the poster, they put up this, temporary marker,
Mm-hmm.
just a rough guess, really, of where they thought the property line was.
Which, I mean, seems pretty common in a rural setting like you're describing.
Exactly. It's like, wide open spaces, you don't always have those clear boundaries.
Right, right.
So you wouldn't think it'd be a big deal, right?
Yeah, no, not at all.
But then this new neighbor moves in next door.
Uh-oh.
And they are immediately up in arms about a car parked just a few inches over this vaguely marked line.
Really? That fence post, I don't know.
Yeah.
It feels like maybe that's not the whole story.
Oh, I think you're right.
Like the reaction seems a bit much, don't you think?
For sure, for sure.
It makes you wonder if there's something more going on, something else is bothering them.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Some other motivation.
Yeah, did they just assume the property line was accurate?
Maybe. Or maybe they just didn't like the look of the car.
Who knows? But it gets even more interesting.
Oh, boy.
Because the neighbor, they even threatened to tow the car.
No way. Seriously?
Yeah, it's like, whoa, hold on a minute.
That escalated quickly.
Right. So the poster, not wanting to deal with any more drama, decides to get a professional land survey done.
That's probably a smart move, just to,
Yeah,
settle things once and for all.
Exactly. Get everything official. Right.
Right.
But here's where things take a turn.
Okay, I'm ready.
The survey, it reveals that the property line is actually 20 feet into the neighbor's property.
What? Are you serious?
I kid you not, 20 feet. Talk about irony, right?
Oh, the irony is thick here. That's amazing.
It's amazing, right. But it gets even better.
It gets better than that. There's more.
Oh, yeah. So in an update to the post,
Okay.
the poster mentions that their neighborhood, while still rural, has seen property values, get this, quadruple since they moved there in 2016.
Whoa, that's a staggering increase.
Isn't it? Yeah, it really speaks to the changing demographics of those rural communities,
You think so?
Yeah, you've got an influx of people with, maybe different values, different expectations.
Oh, percent.
Moving into these areas that have been defined by a certain way of life for so long. So you're thinking, maybe, this new neighbor, who, by the way, is described as being from California.
Okay, yeah.
You're thinking they might be bringing some, urban assumptions into a very rural setting.
Yeah, it's a common pitfall. Imposing urban expectations on rural life, it happens all the time.
It's like they haven't quite adjusted to the rhythm of rural living.
Right, exactly.
Which, brings us to the next chapter of this whole saga, the county complaints.
Oh, this is where it gets good.
Oh, it's about to get wild.
All right, tell me everything.
Okay, so, speaking of overstepping boundaries,
Yeah.
this California neighbor, they didn't stop at property lines.
Oh, no.
According to the poster, this neighbor anonymously reported multiple residents to the county.
Yeah. Seriously?
Yeah, for having what they deemed messy yards.
Oh, come on. That's ridiculous.
Right.
I mean, it's like live and let live, right?
Exactly. And it's like, what are they trying to do? Turn the whole neighborhood into some, perfectly manicured suburb.
It really seems like their actions are coming from a lack of, I don't know, maybe understanding or even respect for the existing community.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's like they're trying to impose their own vision of what rural life should look like.
Right. Onto a community that has its own established norms.
Exactly. Its own way of doing things.
Hey, we were here first.
Exactly.
And, the neighbor's not so subtle attempt at a rural makeover doesn't stop there.
Really? There's more.
Oh, yeah. The poster says they even caught the neighbor on camera.
Oh, boy.
Trespassing on their property.
No.
By at least 40 feet.
To do what?
To examine, get this, their piles of scrap metal.
Oh, my goodness.
And this was before there was even a fence.
I mean, that's bold.
It's outrageous.
And not to mention legally questionable.
Right.
It's like the whole calling the county on their neighbors without cause, that's also a bit problematic.
Yeah.
It raises concerns about, like, their understanding of basic property rights, you know?
Right. Like, hello, I own this land.
It's exactly basic boundaries.
Well, the poster, they weren't having it.
Good for them.
They confronted the neighbor
Oh, how'd that go?
via text. And let's just say the neighbor was not thrilled to discover they'd purchased land next to what they called a pseudo scrapyard.
Oh, the irony.
I know, right? It's like, dude, you moved to the country. What did you expect?
Seriously. It highlights the importance of, like, due diligence and cultural awareness when you're moving into a new community, you know?
For sure.
Wouldn't you want to understand your surroundings before making such a big investment?
Yeah, like, do a little research.
Exactly.
Apparently not.
Oh, no.
Because after that text exchange, things escalate even further.
Uh-oh, how so?
There's an in-person confrontation.
Oh, dear.
The poster describes the neighbor in their front yard, leaning against their no trespassing sign, screaming obscenities.
Whoa, someone needs to take a chill pill.
And maybe get a property survey while they're at it.
Right. Like, you're literally leaning on the sign that proves you wrong.
It's unbelievable. But remember how the neighbor was initially furious about that car parked a few inches over the assumed property line?
Yeah, I remember that. It was the start of all this.
Well, hold on to your hats, folks, because this is where things get really interesting.
Okay, I'm on the edge of my seat. Spill the tea.
You won't believe what happens next.
So to recap, we have this neighbor in Arizona who is completely losing it over a car parked just inches over what they thought was their property line.
Yeah, they were ready to call the tow truck and everything.
But then that land survey revealed a whole different story, didn't it?
Oh, yeah. The truth came out.
That actual boundary was a whole 20 feet into the neighbor's land.
Talk about a plot twist. So what happened next? Did they just forget about the car?
Well, they couldn't exactly ignore the survey results, could they?
True. So what did the poster do with this new information?
They decided to, let's just say, take advantage of the situation.
Oh, this is where it gets good.
They built a fence.
A fence. Okay, makes sense. Establish those boundaries.
But here's the kicker. They built it right along that newly surveyed line.
Which means?
20 feet in to what the neighbor had always assumed was their land.
No way. That's amazing.
And get this, the poster even mentioned in their post that they made it an ugly fence.
Oh, they added insult to injury.
It's almost like poetic justice, isn't
You
it?
reap what you sow, right. But it also makes you wonder if that was the best move.
How so?
Well, I mean, sometimes even when you're in the right, pushing it like that could just make things worse.
That's a good point. Sometimes a peaceful resolution is better than winning.
Exactly. And it makes me think this whole thing, it really shows how much emotions play into these situations.
Absolutely. It's not always about the law. It's about people and their feelings.
Totally. Speaking of, remember how the neighbor was complaining about the poster's messy property?
Oh, yeah, with those piles of scrap metal.
Well, it turns out they had other, maybe messier neighbors to deal with.
Oh, really? What do you mean?
On their other side.
Okay, spill the tea. Who are these neighbors?
Pig farmers.
Pig farmers. Oh, this is getting good.
The poster mentioned they had an equally trashed yard thanks to their pigs.
So the California neighbor is caught between a pseudo scrapyard and a pig farm.
Pretty much. But here's where it gets even wilder.
There's more. I'm hooked.
These pig farming neighbors, they're having their own land dispute with the Californian... No! Seriously? Apparently they built a shed.
Shed? Okay.
Entirely on the Californian neighbor's property.
Oh, no. Are you serious?
But get this, they built it over 15 years ago.
Wait, hold on. That's like adverse possession, right?
Yeah, I think you're right.
They might actually win part of the California's land because of that shed.
That's insane.
It is, but that's how adverse possession works sometimes.
Oh, so break it down for me. How does that even work? You build something on someone else's land and it becomes yours.
Well, it's not quite that simple, but essentially if you've been using that land openly and continuously for a certain period of time.
Like 15 years.
Exactly. And the owner hasn't objected, then yeah, you can potentially gain legal ownership.
That's wild. So in this case, the pig farmer could end up owning that part of the Californian's land.
It's definitely a possibility. They'd have to prove they've been using it and treating it like their own property all this time.
So even though they built on someone else's land, the fact that they did it so long ago could actually help them.
It's a strange legal concept, but yeah, it can work that way.
This whole story is like a real-life lesson in property law.
With a healthy dose of absurdity.
For sure. So we've got the Californian neighbor potentially losing 20 feet to the poster on one side and maybe another chunk to the pig farmer on the other.
The irony is almost palpable.
I know, right? What do you think will happen with all of this? Will the California neighbor just accept these new boundaries?
It's hard to say. They haven't exactly been the most reasonable so far.
And what about the pig farmers? Will they win their land dispute?
We'll have to wait and see, but it's definitely a possibility.
This is better than any TV drama.
It's real life. Sometimes stranger than fiction.
But before we get too caught up in the drama, let's take a step back and think about what this all means in a bigger context.
You're right. This isn't just about one crazy neighbor. It's about the changes happening in rural communities all over.
The influx of new people, the rising property values, and sometimes those clashing lifestyles.
It makes you wonder, what does this mean for the future of these communities?
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've been talking about this wild property line story, from rural Arizona.
Yeah, it's a fascinating case. Really makes you think.
It does. It's got us thinking about all those changes happening in rural communities across the country.
It seems like a lot of places are dealing with similar issues.
Right. Like the influx of new residents, rising property values.
And the clash of cultures that can sometimes happen.
It makes you wonder, what does it all mean for the future of these communities,
Not a good question.
Like, are these places just going to lose their character as more people from urban areas move in?
It's tough to say. There's no easy answer.
What do you think?
Well, on one hand, you have the potential for growth, right? Economic revitalization.
Yeah, new people, new businesses, new ideas.
Exactly. And those new residents, they often bring in investment, fresh perspectives.
Makes sense, but I guess there's also that risk of losing what made these places special in the first place.
That's the other side of the coin, for sure.
Those traditions, that sense of community, the slower pace of life.
It's a delicate balance, finding a way to integrate newcomers while preserving what's already there.
It's like walking a tightrope.
It is, and it takes a conscious effort from everyone involved.
So it's not just about newcomers adapting, but also about longtime residents being open to change.
Absolutely. It has to go both ways.
It's about finding that middle ground, that mutual respect.
Recognizing that everyone has something to offer, even if they see things differently.
That makes sense. Thinking back to our story from Arizona, that California neighbor, their approach wasn't exactly a recipe for harmony.
No, not really. It felt more like an attempt to impose their own vision.
Yeah, without really considering the existing community.
It's a good reminder that moving to a new place isn't just about buying property. It's about joining a community.
And respecting that community, right?
Exactly. Being a good neighbor.
But, the story also shows us another side of things. With those pig farming neighbors.
Oh, yeah. That's a different kind of integration altogether.
They've been there for years, running their business, adapting to the lifestyle.
And potentially winning their land dispute through adverse possession.
It shows a different way of being part of a rural community.
A bit more organic, a bit more accepting of things as they are.
So it's not just about where you move, but how you move.
Exactly. Approaching your new community with humility, a willingness to learn.
And a genuine desire to be a good neighbor.
That's what it's all about, building those connections, embracing the differences, finding common ground.
That's a message that resonates no matter where you live.
It does. It makes you think about your own community.
And what you can do to make it a better place.
That's the power of these deep dives. They get us thinking, questioning, exploring different perspectives.
So for our listener out there, what's the takeaway from all this?
I think it's a reminder that we all have a role to play in shaping our communities.
Whether it's being mindful of our impact, engaging in respectful dialogue, or just lending a hand to a neighbor.
All those actions, big or small, they matter.
And hopefully they can help us avoid any fence-related showdowns.
That's always a good goal.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. It's been quite a journey.
It has. Always a pleasure exploring these stories with you.
And for our listeners, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep building those bridges in your own communities.
And remember, if you're ever thinking about buying that rural property, always get that land survey first.
You never know what you might